ॐ दक्षिणस्य समारम्भा शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमा अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ता स्मर्या गुरुपरम्परा श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। परिज्ञानाश्रम श्रीगुरुशङ्कर परिज्ञानाश्रम शङ्कर सद्गुरु केशववामन कृष्णपाण्डुरङ्ग आनन्द परिज्ञान गुरु सद्यो जात शङ्कर सद्गुरु गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. We are almost coming to the conclusion of Kathopanishad, and in the last session we saw that Bhagwan Yamadharmaraja, the Acharya, is telling Nachiketa that this knowledge is something about the most subtle thing in this universe, Atman or Brahman, Atman and Brahman being the same. It is the subtlest principle. It is all pervading, it is the adhishtanam of everything that we come across. But even then, it is not available for our senses. It is not perceived as an object. Therefore, it is only through the teachings of the Shruti, of the Upanishad, that we can come to know about it. And one has to have extreme Shraddha. One has to have that Shraddha in Upanishads. In our scriptural teaching, we should have the Shraddha. If the Shraddha is not there, then there will always be a doubt that this is something which the Upanishads are talking about, and the Upanishads say it is not available for words. Yato vacho nivartante, and na manasa yato vacho nivartante manasa saha. It says it is not something which is an object of the sense organs. It says, then how can I accept that there is something like Brahman? That is what he said in the 12th verse, which we took up in the last session, where he says in the second line, Asti iti bruvato anyatra katham tadupalabhyate. Unless I have the great faith or trust or Shraddha in the Upanishads and the teachings of the scriptures, that the Upanishads are not leading me in a wrong path. The Upanishads are trying to tell me about my own nature, which is nothing but this consciousness. And this consciousness, being the very subtlest of everything, it is not available for perception by any of the sense organs. And it can be known as the knower consciousness, as myself, only when directed by the Shruti. There should be something, there should be someone, there should be some pramana or some kind of a proof of teaching, some kind of an evidence which tells me that you are that consciousness which you are looking for. You are the Adhishtanam of this entire universe. Aham Brahmasmi. That's what the Upanishads say. Tat Tvam Asi. That Brahman, the subtlest of the subtle, that which is a Sukshmat Sukshmataram, Nityam, Sarvagatam. This particular Atma or Brahman is nothing but your own Swarupam. That is what you are. What you are looking for is you yourself and nothing else. That's what all the Upanishads are saying. And therefore, unless we have Shraddha in the Pramana of Vedanta, it is very, very difficult for us to understand this. And many people say, let us prove scientifically. But we have to understand one thing, that scientific proving is in the matter of material world. What science proves is in the realm of the material world. The pramana is for a different field of experience in science, whereas Vedanta is the proof for a very, very different field where science or matter has absolutely no entry, and therefore Veda as the Pramana, Vedanta as the Pramana is something which I have to accept. If I don't accept the Vedas as the Pramana, then I will never be able to see myself as that consciousness for which I have been looking for. That is why all the Upanishads, so many Upanishads, talk about what? Tattvamasi, that consciousness, that Brahman you are, Ayamatma Brahma, this consciousness which is within this body, mind, sense complex, within every jiva, is nothing but that consciousness. That is what is talked about in every Upanishad, and all the Upanishads are pointing out to that which is the subject consciousness. And unless we have the trust and the Shraddha in the Upanishads, it is not possible for us to understand that ultimately I am that object which I am looking for. It is not an object of perception, but it is the very subject consciousness. In the 13th verse, Bhagwan Yamadharmaraja says that अस्तीत्येव उपलब्धव्यः तत्त्वभावेन चोभयोः अस्तीत्येव उपलब्धस्य तत्त्वभावः प्रसीदति. So what Yamadharmaraja is telling is, all the Upanishads are telling you are that Brahman. Tat Brahma Ahamasmi iti I have to know. Before I know that Brahman to be Aham, I have to first accept that there is something called as Brahman. I have to accept that there is this something which the Upanishads are talking about, which is called Brahman. Asti. There is something called as Brahman. There is something called as this consciousness, Adhishtanam. And straight away for me to accept that I am that Brahman is not possible. So the first step is that I have to accept that the Upanishads are talking about something which is nothing but the Adhishtanam of this entire universe. The only truth, Ekam, Advayam, Advitiyam, Brahma. And that Brahman is nothing but I, this consciousness, is the second step of knowing. The first step is Paroksha Jnanam, where I have to understand Brahma Asti. Only when I understand that there is something called Brahman, then I can claim that I am that Brahman in the next step. Therefore, what Yamadharmaraja is saying is straight away, Tattva Bhavena, that means as myself, that Brahman as myself, Aham, I am that Brahman. It is very difficult straight away. Before that, I have to understand. What should I understand? I have to understand that there is something called as Brahman. There is something which is the Adhishtanam of this entire universe. There is something which is the cause of this entire universe. That is something which is subtler than the subtlest. That is something which is present all over, all pervading. And then in the next step, the Upanishad says that Brahman you are. Tat Brahma Tvam Asi. So Tattva Bhavena, I am that. Tattva means what? I am that principle which is myself. I am that particular principle. I am that Brahman, which is nothing but what is described by the Upanishads as the Jagat Karanam Brahma. So the first step is what? To know Brahma Asti. Brahman is there. This understanding, this trust in the scriptures is the first step. And then through the teaching of Vedanta, I claim, I accept that Brahman, that consciousness which the Upanishads are talking about is nothing but me, myself. Tattva Bhavena. My Swarupam is nothing but that Brahman. So he says here, Asti iti eva upalabdhasya tattva bhavena cha ubhayoho. Once I have understood that there is Brahman, then in the next step it is easy for me to claim that I am that Brahman. So I have to go step by step. Brahman is the first step, which requires a lot of Shraddha on my part. And once I understand the teachings of the Upanishad, then I claim Aham Tad Brahma Asmi. I am that Brahman iti tattva bhavena, as my own nature, as my own swarupam. I claim it. So he says, Astityeva upalabdhasya tattva bhavaha prasidati. From asti, it has to be grasped first as asti and later as asmi. Brahman is, that Brahman is me. Brahma asti is the first understanding. Tad Brahma aham asmi tattva bhavena, as my own swarupam. I understand that. That is the final step of understanding. So here he's giving the sadhana of Shraddha. Unless I have Shraddha in the Shruti, unless I have Shraddha in the Guru Vakya, it is not possible for me to understand that there is something called as Brahman, and that Brahman which the Upanishads are talking about is nothing but I, this consciousness. This is what he's saying in the 13th verse. Then 14th and 15th verses are going to talk about the phalam of this Vidya, Brahma Vidya phalam. The last one, Brahma Vidya phalam. What is the phalam? Moksha is the phalam of Brahma Vidya. If I have understood this Brahma Vidya properly, if I have clearly understood that I am this Brahman, then what is remaining there? What is left behind? Nothing is left behind. In the sense, I have experienced, I have almost, in the sense what Upanishad says, Brahma Ashnute, Brahma Samashnute. That means what? I abide in my Brahma Swarupa. I abide in my Atma Swarupa. And I'm totally free from all the samsara. And freedom from samsara is called as moksha. What is the meaning of freedom from samsara? The Jagat no longer causes shoka and moha to me. My body mind sense complex no longer causes shoka or moha to me. So that means I understand that the Jagat, along with the body mind sense complex, is mithya, is actually not existing. It is only an experiential reality. Paramarthataha, it is not existing. Pratititaha, experientially this world is there. This body, mind, and upadhi is experientially very much there, but it is not the absolute reality. What is the absolute reality? Aham Atma Satyam. Paramarthika Satyam I am. And the body, mind, sense complex, including the entire Jagat of various objects, names, and forms, is nothing but mithya. This is what I understand. And when I understand this, I am free from all the bondage that the world causes me. I am free from bondage. And this phalam. So, what is the phalam of Brahma Jnanam? Jivan Mukti. Here and now I am free. I don't have to die to be free from this body. I am free here and now. In spite of this body, in spite of this Jagat outside, I am totally free from samsara. What is it that causes samsara to me? What is this samsara? Shoka moha, raga shoka moha. This is what is the samsara for me. And then he says, what is the ultimate phalam of this knowledge? In the 14th verse, he says, Yada sarve pramuchyante kamaye asya hridhi shritaha athamartyo amrito bhavati atra brahma samashnute. So, ultimately, what is this phalam? Inner freedom from samsara. Outer freedom, as long as this body mind sense complex is there, nobody is free from outside. We have to depend on the family, we have to depend on other jivas, other people, we have to depend on the world. There is no question of total freedom. Outside freedom is not there till this body mind sense complex upadhi is there, though it is mithya. The transactions have to go on between the body mind sense complex which is mithya and the jagat which is mithya. Guna guneshu vartante, indriyani indriyartheshu vartante, and the vyavahara continues. There is no end to this. So outside in the world, though it is mithya, this transaction between the jiva and the jagat is mithya but cannot be avoided. But This transaction does not cause me any samsara anymore, because I know that this jagat, this body mind sense complex, and this vyavahara between the two is nothing but mithya. When I have understood this very, very clearly, I am free. Where? Here and now. I am no longer a victim of my own samsara or sorrow, which is the most important component of samsara, apurnatvam and kama. Somewhere I'm all the time feeling insecure, all the time feeling, incomplete. I feel that by doing something, I can make myself complete. I have a feeling that I have to do something to make myself complete. I am incomplete. Apurnatvam. All the time, this apurnatvam is there. And therefore, there are desires. Always there are desires which I want to fulfill. And I feel that fulfilling my desires is going to give me that completeness. I don't understand what Shruti says. Shruti says, you are the Ananda Swarupa Atma. You are the Purnatva Swarupa Ananta Atma. You are the Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. But what is my samsara? Since I don't know the truth about myself, I have got the limitations, self non acceptance, limitations of the body mind sense complex, and the world is on me. And what do I say? I say that I'm incomplete and I have to fulfill so many desires to feel full, to feel that completeness, and to feel that happiness. So, one of the most important offshoots of samsara is kama, or kama is that which is the first step towards samsara. Kama means what? Binding desires. I have to do this, then only I will get a feeling of fulfillment. If I don't do this, I don't get fulfilled. I don't feel the sense of fulfillment. I don't feel the sense of happiness. Unless I have this, I'm not happy. Unless I do this, I'm not happy. Unless I become something else, I'm not happy. As I am, I don't accept myself. As I am, there is self non acceptance. I always want to be somewhere else. I always want to become something else. This becoming, this desire to be something else, this binding desire or kama is the first offshoot of samsara, or the first sign of samsara. Apurnatvam, kama, karma, karma phala, and the janma keeps going on and on. But what happens in a person who has understood this Atmajnanam? So Yamadharmaraja says, Yada sarve pramuchante हृदि स्थिताः कामाः ये अस्य. All the kamas, hृदि स्थिता kama, all the kamas or the binding desires which are situated in my mind. Where are the desires? They are in the mind. The mind itself is mithya, but I do not understand that the desire in the mind is also mithya. I take that desire to be the reality. I work for it. I run after it. I want to complete. I want to fulfill that desire because I feel fulfilling this desire gives me freedom from sorrow, freedom from unhappiness, freedom of limitation. But what is the phalam of this knowledge? The phalam of this knowledge is I have clearly understood aham satyam jagan mithya iti. I have clearly understood. So, yada, when this knowledge has been clearly assimilated, sarve hridisthitaha kama pramuchyante. When all the desires, the binding desires which are situated, which are there in the mind, when they all get resolved by this knowledge, what does this knowledge make me understand? I am the Purnatva Swarupa Atma. I don't have to depend on anything else to become full. I am the very fullness Swarupa. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be somewhere else. I don't have to become something else to know my real nature. My real nature is I am the Sat Chit Ananda Rupa Atma. When this knowledge is very clearly assimilated, all the binding desires that are there in this mind, which are making me to run after doing any number of karmas for fulfilling the desires, they all disappear. Because I am abiding in the Sukha Swarupa Atma, no desire is left behind, which is a binding desire. Of course, even a jnani may have a desire to do something to help the world, Loka Kalyana. But then this desire is not something which is born out of, it is not born out of unfulfilled feeling. A desire born out of a fulfilled mind, a desire born out of a person who is abiding in the Atma Swarupa, meant for Jagat Kalyana, Loka Kalyana, is a very different thing. What are our desires? They are meant for making ourselves fulfilled. So, yada sarve hridishritaha kama pramuchyante ye asya kamaha. That means this person's desires. Athamartyo amrito bhavati. This means this person is free now and he's immortal. He's free from samsara. He's absolutely free from samsara. Martyaha amrito bhavati. This person who thinks he is a limited jiva, who is a mortal jiva, realizes his immortal nature, realizes that he is the very fulfillment Swarupa Atma. He is the very Purnatva Swarupa Atma. Atra Brahma Samashnute. This is the meaning of moksha. This is the meaning of understanding Brahman. When I understand that, I am the Purnatva Swarupa Atma. I don't have to depend on anything else or anybody else to become fulfilled. This is called as Brahma Samashnute, attained moksha, realized that he is free from all desires. We saw that in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, also in the Sthita Prajna Lakshanas. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushtaha sthitadirmuniruchyate. We saw that atmanyeva atmana tushtaha. He is abiding in his own Ananda Swarupa. He does not need to do anything to fulfill any desire to give him any kind of a fulfillment. The same thing is continued in the next verse also, where he says, Yada sarve prabhidyante hridayasyeha granthayaha athamartyo amrito bhavati yetavad anushasanam. So here Yamadharmaraja is extending the previous verse a little bit, and he's saying here, this is the time, this is when I have understood what the Shruti, what the Upanishads talk about my own Swarupam as the Purnatva Swarupa, Ananda Swarupa, Atma. When I have understood myself, that means at that time itself, the knots of ignorance in my heart completely go. This knowledge, this Atmavidya, Brahmavidya, removes once for all this ignorance in me. What is the ignorance in me? I am the body mind sense complex. The body mind sense complex is real. The world is real. I am limited because of this limited body mind sense complex. This is my avidya. I do not know my reality. What I really am, I do not know, which is called as Mula Avidya. This Mula Avidya or ignorance is described in our Upanishads as a Hridaya Granthi, as a knot. Why is it defined as a knot? A knot is something which is difficult to unknot. That is one thing. And as the knot gets older and older and older, it becomes more and more difficult to open the knot, unknot it. Similarly, for millions of lives, we have been afflicted by this knot of self ignorance. Knot means K-N-O-T, knot. This knot of self ignorance has been afflicting us for millions of lives. And this knot has become so tight that every janma, our avidya is compounded. The knot of avidya is compounded. But this is one knowledge which completely frees me from all my ignorance. And once I have understood that I am this Brahman, I am this Purnatva Swarupa Atma, and when I abide in this Ananda Swarupa, Purnatva Swarupa Atma, then it is this Granthi, this unnotable, unnotable, that which cannot be, untied, such a knot is removed once for all. There is no other way of removing this Hridaya Granthi. Where is this knot? This is in my intellect. It is in my Hridaya. Therefore, the Upanishad says Hridaya Granthihi. There is an Upanishad called Mundakopanishad which says Bhidyate Hridaya Granthihi Chidyante Sarva Samshayaha Kshiyante Chasya Karmani Tasmin Drishte Paravare. What it means is the same thing which Yamadharmaraja is telling here, that this knowledge unknots the knot of ignorance of millions of lives once and for all. And I am free and I understand that I am of the nature of this immortal and Ananda Swarupi Atma. Nitya Swarupa, Ananta Swarupa Atma Ahamasmi iti I understand. So he says here, Yada Sarve Granthayaha Hridayasya Iha Grantayaha Prabhidyante. That means what? All the knots of the heart, the knots of ignorance. When the knots of ignorance are completely gone, when the knots are gone, then what happens? I find that here he says, Ataha Martyo Amrito Bhavati. I, who consider myself to be a mortal jiva, a limited jiva, this ignorance is completely and totally gone. Athamartyo amrito bhavati. This limited jiva, which considers itself to be limited because of the limitations of the body mind sense complex, here the person completely gets out of this ignorance. The Hridaya Granthi, the knot of ignorance which has been afflicting the heart, in which is in the Hridayam, which is in the intellect of the individual for millions of lives, that knot is completely removed and I abide in my Jnana Swarupa Atma. This is the knowledge. Hey Nachiketa, what you asked for me in your third boon as to what is it that is there even after a person dies, what is it that is all the time there? This is what it is. Knowing which all your samsara is gone, knowing which you are a Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta means here and now I am free from all my bondage. I am free from ignorance. This knot of ignorance, when it is completely removed, I am totally free from my samsara. This is called as Jivan Mukti. And when this body falls, when this body dies, there is no question of this jiva coming back again in another body. There is this Videha Mukti also. So the 14th verse and the 15th verse talked about nothing but the phalam of this knowledge in the form of Jivan Mukti, most important, and then Videha Mukti also. Then in the 16th verse, Bhagwan Yamadharmaraja wants to remind Nachiketa that this knowledge phalam I have already told you. What is the phalam of this knowledge? In the 15th verse and 16th verse I have told you. But Nachiketa, do you remember that in the first chapter, in the first section, you asked me for a particular ritual called as Nachiketagni and a particular upasana called as Virat Upasana. I gave you, now he does not say all these things in this, we have to remember. Yamadharmaraja gave Nachiketa a ritual, a vidya called as Nachiketagnihi, an Agni Vidya, along with an upasana called as the Virat Upasana. And what did he say? Those people who do this Nachiketagni ritual 3 times along with the Virat Upasana will reach Brahmaloka. They will not come back to the other lokas, but through the Shukla Gati. You must remember the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In the 8th chapter, what does Krishna say? Dve Gati. He says there are 2 Gatis in which an Upasaka, a Karmi can go out of the body and reach the higher worlds. He talked about an Upasaka who goes through the Shukla Gati reaches Brahmaloka. Same thing is being talked about here. A person who has not come to Vedanta, a person who does not have this Atmajnanam, or a person who does not manage to get this Atmajnanam in this life, but a person who has done enough of upasana, like the Nachiketagni karma with the Virat upasana, what happens to such a person? Such an upasaka, he says, goes to the highest of the lokas called as the Brahmaloka, and at the end of this creation, at the time of Pralaya, he has a chance of totally getting out of this cycle of birth and death. And this is what is called as the Krama Mukti. This is what is called as the Krama Mukti. Jivan Mukti we talked about Videha Mukti. Now he wants to talk about the Krama Mukti. And what does he say in the 16th verse? He say, Shatam chaika cha hridayasya nadyah तासां मूर्धानम् अभिनिसृतैका तयो ऊर्ध्वमायन्नमृतत्वमेति विश्वं अन्या उत्क्रमणे भवन्ति. We don't have to bother much about this particular verse. Here, only remember one thing, that Yamadharma Raja is trying to give the phalam of the Nachiket Agni, Karma and Virat Upasana. That's all. So what does he say here? Those people who have done enough of karma, like Trinachiketagni, those who have done, or those who have kindled the Nachiketagni 3 times, Trinachiketa, he calls. Trinachiketa means those who have done this Trinachiketa, Nachiketagni 3 times. These people actually, along with Virat Upasana, what happens to them? They come out through the Sushumna Nadi. He says here, Shatancha Eka cha Hridayasya Nadyah. Shatancha Eka. There are 101 nadis which are coming out of the heart. Now, what is the meaning of nadi? Nadi is nadi. We cannot translate it. You can take it as a passage. It's a kind of a subtle passage through which various things happen, and at the time of the death also, the prana goes through one of these various nadis. There are 101 main nadis which are coming out of the heart into various parts of the body. It's not just 101. There are thousands of nadis, but the main nadis are supposed to be 101 nadis. And he says that tasam murdhan मूर्धानम अभिनिसृतैकेका. Murdhanam abhinisriti eka. There is one of them which is called as Sushumna Nadi, which goes up and it leads to the Brahmarandra here. And a person who is an Upasaka leaves the body at the time of death through the Sushumna Nadi. We have seen that in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, where Krishna says the yogi withdraws his prana along with the sense organs, directs it through the Sushumna Nadi, and through the Brahmarandra, this particular jiva leaves the body. And when the jiva leaves the body, it goes through a path called as the bright path or the Shuklagati, and the jiva reaches Brahmaloka. That is what was told in the 8th chapter, in the last few verses of the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Same thing is being told here, that the person who has done the Nachiketagni 3 times along with the Virat Upasana is a person at the time of death through the Sushumna Nadi. His jiva enters through the Shuklagati into the Brahmaloka, and there this jiva has the possibility of Kramamukti or freedom from this particular samsara at the end of the creation, again with the knowledge which happens in Brahmaloka, whereas all the others Vishang Anya Utkramane Bhavanti. Whereas all the other jivas who are not upasakas, who have not done the rituals with the upasana, they leave this physical body, the jivas, through various other nadis. Through which nadi it leaves, we do not know. From which particular passage the prana or the jiva with the prana leaves the body, we do not know. We only know that in an upasaka, the phalam is what? Brahmaloka. What is the phalam for this jnanam here and now? It is Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. What is the phalam for Upasana? One goes to the Brahmaloka, In Brahmaloka, one gets this Vidya and freed forever at the end of this creation. Which is easier? Going to Brahmaloka is easier, or here in this particular human life, when I have got this capacity to enter into this Moksha Marga, Shreyo Marga, with the help of a teacher and the Upanishads, get this. Why should I unnecessarily bother to wait to go to Brahmaloka? We saw that in one of the previous verses. In four lokas, this knowledge is possible: Manushya Loka, Pitru Loka, Gandharva Loka, Brahma Loka. Here, how this Upasaka goes to Brahma Loka is being talked about. Let us not take, this, even if you have not understood this verse, it doesn't matter. Only understand that the phalam for a person who has done the Nachiketagni ritual along with the Virat Upasana 3 times as described by Yamadharmaraja, the phalam is Brahmaloka Prapti and Krama Mukti. Whereas for a person who has come to the Jnana Marga and has understood Aham Brahmasmi, for such a person, the phalam is freedom from sorrow, freedom from samsara, here and now. Jivan Mukti. That much, if we remember, that should be enough. Now, Yamadharma Raja is worried that this should not be the last verse. In the previous verse, he told Yetavat Yeva Anushasanam. In the 15th verse, he said that Yetada Deva Anushasanam in the last word, last line. That means I have already told you Yetava Deva. This is the teaching, Nachiketa. What you asked for, I have talked about it. I have talked about what this Brahman is, what are the sadhanas to make myself eligible for this knowledge. What is this knowledge? What is this Brahman? How to attain this knowledge? And what is the phalam of this Brahmajnanam? I have told you everything. And as told in the 15th verse, Yetavadyeva Anushasanam. This is what I have to talk about Brahma Vidya. But he suddenly remembers in the 16th verse that the phalam for the Nachiketagni ritual has been told long ago, and so he has to talk about Krama Mukti, he has to talk about Brahmaloka Prapti, so he gives the results or the phalam for Nachiketagni ritual along with the Upasana also. Now Yamadharma Raja is worried that this should not be the last mantra of the Upanishad. Krama Mukti and Brahmaloka Prapti should not be the last mantra of the Upanishad. The last mantra should be dealing with Atmajnana itself. Therefore, in the 17th verse, he concludes the teaching of the Kathopanishad by reiterating again that the phalam of Vidya phalam, Brahma Vidya phalam, Atma Vidya phalam is reiterated so that Kramamukti is not considered to be the final. Brahma Loka Prapti is not the final. It is only one of the steps. What is the final, what you call as mukti or moksha? What is the ultimate goal of a mumukshu? Jivan Mukti. And therefore, he concludes again in the 17th verse, he concludes the entire teaching by reiterating the Brahma Vidya Phalam as Jivan Mukti. So, what does the 17th verse say? Praise of Brahma Vidya. Here he says, and then the Phalam, he says, Angushta Matra Purushaha Antaratma Sada Jananam हृदये सन्निविष्टः तं स्वात् शरीरात् प्रवृहेत् मुञ्जादिवेशिका धैर्येण तं विद्या शुक्रम् अमृतं तं विद्या शुक्रम् अमृतमिति अंगुष्टमात्र पुरुषः. We saw that earlier. That light of consciousness, that Sakshi Chaitanya Atma is available within your own space of the heart, which is of the space of an Angushta. This consciousness is available, it is recognizable in your own heart. Angushta Matraha Purushaha. Antaratma. This is Purushaha means what? That consciousness which is abiding, which is there, which is available, which is recognizable within your own body. Okay? Sharire or Puri Vartate, Puri Upalabhyate, Puri Shete iti Purushaha. This consciousness available within the Hridaya Guha. which is the Angushta Matra space, is called as Angushta Matra Purusha. Purusha is not Angushta Matra. In my heart, in that small space, this entire, the Atma, all pervasive Atma, is recognizable in this heart. Purushaha Antaratma, it is the Antaratma, Sada Jananam Hridaye Sannivishtaha, always present, available, recognizable, Upalabdha in a person's Hridaya Guha, in every Jiva's Hridaya Guha. Tam Svat Sharirat Pravrihe. May you do this Atma Anatma Vivek. What is ultimately Brahma Vidya? Atma Anatma Viveka, and claiming myself to be the Atma and not the Anatma. Separate cognitively, intellectually, separate the Anatma from Atma and shift my identification, shift my entanglement, shift my focus from Anatma to Atma. Rather than abiding in the Anatma, I abide in the Atma. So he says, Svat Sharirat Pravrihe. May you distinctly see that you, this consciousness, this Angushtamatra Purushaha, is you, the real you, and not the body, mind, sense complex. And Dhairyena, with commitment, learn to separate the Anatma from Atma. May you do Atma Anatma Viveka with commitment, to the Guru and Shastra. How? Munjat Ishika Vada. Ishika Munjad Iva Ishikam Pravrihet means what? Separate Anatma from Atma. May you have the Atma Anatma Viveka. Like you take out the Ishika from the Munja grass. We have seen this in Vivek Chudamani also. There is a grass called as the Munja grass, which has a very, very thorny outer surface. And inside this thorny outer surface is the tender, sweet grass Ishika. So if you want that inner tender grass, very slowly, very carefully, you have to remove the outer covering and then remove the inner grass to taste the sweetness of that grass. So it is given in our scriptures. Atma Anatma Viveka is compared to removing the outer surface of the munja grass. This Nididhyasanam is also called that. In Nididhyasanam, what do? Constantly, intellectually, cognitively, after having heard through Shravanam what the Vedanta says, that you are not the body, mind, sense complex, but you are that Atma. Having constantly heard that, having gone over it again and again, after doing Mananam in Nididhyasanam, what am I doing? I am separating cognitively the Atma from Anatma. And I am not the Anatma body, mind, sense complex. I am this Angushta Matra Purushaha which is available. Purusha is not Angushta Matra. It is only a figurative explanation because it is available in that Hridaya Guha, which is available. Sarve Arjuna Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. Krishna said, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriddeshe Tishtati. That's what he's saying here. Sada Jananam Hridaye Sannivishta. Available in the Hridaya Guha of everybody, every jiva. Let you, the mumukshu, have the capacity to slowly have the vivekena, see yourself not as the anatma but atma. And this process of seeing myself, separating myself as the atma, different from the anatma, is the process which is compared to removing the inner tender grass of munja from the outer surface. So svat sharirat, from the anatma sharira, pravrihet munjadi iva ishikam. Munjat iva ishikam, like that. Tam vidya shukram amritam. Tam vidyat shukram amritam idi. Tam vidyat Shukram Amritam Vidyat with Vidya, with Viveka, Tam Shukram Amritam. May you see yourself as that Shukram Amritam Atma, as that Shukram Amritam consciousness. So he says, Tam Vidyat Shukram Amritam Tam vidyat shukram amritam iti. From that vidya, from that Atma Vidya, with this kind of a clear differentiation between Anatma and Atma, may you abide in your own Swarupam. See yourself not as the Anatma body mind sense complex, but see yourself and understand yourself as that Shukram Amritam Atma Ahamasmi. Shukram means Shubhram, clear. Shukram Amritam Atma Ahamasmi. Twice he says, Tam Shukram Amritam, Tam Vidyat Shukram Amritam iti. So when any Upanishad closes down, it repeats the last word twice. So Tam Vidyat Shukram Amritam, Tam Vidyat Shukram Amritam iti. From that knowledge, from this separation of Atma and Anatma, may you clearly see yourself as this Purushaha which is available in the heart of every living being. With this, actually, the teaching of the Upanishad is over. Yamadharmaraja and Nachiketa probably say bye bye to each other, and the dialogue between Nachiketa, the Shishya, and Yamadharmaraja, the teacher, is over. Now, the Upanishad which introduced the Guru and Shishya comes and concludes the entire Upanishad in the 18th verse. What does he say? What does the Upanishad say? Mrityu proktam nachiketo thalabdva vidyametam yoga vidhim chakritsnam ब्रह्म प्राप्तो विरजो अभूद् विमृत्युः अन्यो अपि एवं यो विदध्यात्मवेव. So he says, Mrityu Prokta. This is something which was, this Vidya was given by Mrityu Devata. Nachiketo atha labdva. Nachiketa got this Vidya from this teacher. Vidyam yetam yoga vidim chakritsnam. He not only got this Vidya, but he also got the Nachiketagni ritual and the Upasana. So he learned the Karma Upasana Vidhi. He also learned from Yamadharmaraja the ultimate teachings of the Upanishad, the ultimate teaching of this knowledge, this Vidya, this Brahma Vidya. Brahma Praptaha. He attained Brahman means what? He abided himself in his own true nature, Brahma Swarupam. Virajo Abhut, Vimrityuhu. Nachiketa became Jivan Muktaha. He also understood this. Abiding in his Atma Swarupam, he became the Jivan Muktaha. Virajo Abhut Vimrityuhu. He went beyond mortality. He understood that he is that immortal Brahman, which is all pervading Brahman, which is Nityam, which is Shukram, Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Atma Brahma Ahamasmi iti understood, and he abided in that Atma Surupam, and he was once and all for all free from his samsara. And he says, Anyo api evam, any other person also who understands this knowledge like Nachiketa understood. Anyo api evam yo vidadhyat atmameva. A person, any other person who understands this knowledge the way Nachiketa understood, as taught by Yamadharmaraja, through his guru, having Shraddha in the Upanishads, in the Shruti, in the scriptures, such a person will also be free and Jivan Mukta like Nachiketa. So this one is not, Upanishad is not only for Nachiketa, it is for all of us mumukshus. All of us mumukshus, it is necessary. And the Upanishad ends with the Shantipata. I have already given you the meaning of Shantipata, but we will chant the Shantipata and end this Kathopanishad sessions. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. With this, we end the Upanishad, Kathopanishad. I have only given a sample. Swamiji, Sadhyoja Shankarashram Swamiji, our Holiness wanted me to give an idea of what an Upanishad sounds like or feels like. And so I have given an idea of the most popular and one of the most beautiful Upanishads, one of the easier Upanishads, Kathopanishad. I have given you a basic idea of this in 25 sessions. Of course, 25 sessions is really short, but then it is sufficient enough for us to know what is being taught in this Upanishad. And those who are interested in going deeper can go through it again in a very much deeper manner. And since this is the last of the Upanishad session, I would like to again thank all my colleagues who have worked behind the scenes to make these 25 sessions possible. Archana, the first one, then Sharmila, Shantish, and there are so many others who are working behind this to see that every Wednesday at 7 p.m. these sessions are available to you. And now, what we will be doing from the next session, we will see what we'll be doing and which particular text or what we are doing. You will, we will see what is to be done. ॐ नन्दन्तु साधका सर्वे विनश्यन्तु विदूषकाः अवस्थाशाम्भवी मेस्तु प्रसन्नोऽस्तु गुरुस्तदा सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखमाप्नुयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ नमो भगवते वैवस्वताय मृत्यवे ब्रह्मविद्याचार्याय नचिकेतसे च।